Good morning, everybody. It is Tuesday, May 24th, 2022. This is a special meeting of the Commissioners of the City of Rehoboth Beach. We're live at City Hall, Commissioners Room, second floor. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 9:01 a.m. We'll take roll call. Commissioner Tony Sharp,
Here.
Commissioner Jay Legree, absent. Commissioner Ed Stranowski,
Here.
Commissioner Susan Gay,
Here.
Commissioner Patrick Gossett,
Here.
Commissioner Tony Bennett,
Tony Bennett. My heart's in San Francisco, but Tim Bennett's here.
I've got singing on my mind.
You have a good weekend, Mayor?
Commissioner Tim Bennett.
Here.
Very good. And I'm Mayor Stan Mills. We have a quorum, so we're able to formally conduct business today. Thank you all for being here. I also want to thank everybody that's watching. We don't have anybody in the seats, members of the public with us today, but I'm sure people will be watching, and we appreciate that. I'd like to note that one piece of correspondence has been identified. I don't know that it was shared with everybody. It actually came in at our last Tuesday's meeting from Wynn Achenbach, one of our constituents. And it says the following subject: average daily traffic is irrelevant in Rehoboth Beach. Obviously, we were talking about Chapter 6 transportation. And during that meeting at 11:45 a.m., when Achenbach wrote us and said the following: ClearSpace told us that this was a relevant statistic, that is average daily traffic, and a reason their presence at the traffic circle would not present any problems. It is not. We are so seasonal that the 26,000 cars per day is totally misleading. Please don't state the figure without pointing out how greatly it varies by season. Future site plans review applications will use it and attribute it to the CDP. So if we get to that section and somebody wants to sponsor a change, I would like you to please speak up. Thank you. With that, I want to remind everybody the purpose of this special meeting today is to continue review of draft of the comprehensive development plan as referred to the mayor and commissioners by the Planning Commission on May 13th, 2022, in order to prepare for consideration of adoption by the mayor and commissioners on or before July 29, 2022. I'd like to remind everybody that the Planning Commission referred the updated CDP to the mayor and commissioners on May 13. The mayor and commissioners, we conducted our first updated CDP meeting on May 17th, a morning and an afternoon session, so meeting 1 and 2. The goal, of course, is to adopt the updated CDP by ordinance on or before July 29. We've got to remember that there are time constraints, that if we do something significant, we have to resubmit to plus on or before June 1st. Today we conduct meetings 3 and if needed, number 4. And at the end of the meeting, as I stated last time, we will determine whether we need more meetings and how many more and what our next ones will be. I thought it was productive to review, although laborious, to review chapter by chapter, page by page, but that is what we'll do again today. What we'll do is go through some opening pages. There's just one change I'd like to make. Chapter 6 would be next, only reviewing my suggested addendums that were distributed and included as a support document in this agenda, unless, of course, anybody else has additional suggestions. Chapter 7 would be next, environmental protections, the appendix, the maps, Chapter 8, implementation, and Chapter 1, executive summary. And again, we'll end the meeting with addressing the need or not to resubmit to plus and what our next meeting schedule is. With that, we'll go to the opening pages. I call them, they precede Chapter 1. The only thing I have is on page II of the opening pages. I would like, under the former board and commission contributing members, I would like to add under the Planning Commission, Susan Gay, comma, vice chair. That's all I have. Is there any objections to adding that?
Thanks, appreciate that.
If not, let me also, well, I keep forgetting to introduce other members here participating today. We have City Manager, Interim City Manager Evan Miller. We have City Solicitor Glenn Mendalis. We have City Clerk Ann Womack. And we have Lauren Good of our consulting firm, Wallace and Montgomery. Thank you all for being here and also participating with us today. The next item we're going to go to is Chapter 6. The only intent here, since we went through it page by page, is to give everybody an opportunity to comment on my suggested addendums, the 4 paragraphs. Are there any edits, changes, objections, concurrence with finding a place? I haven't suggested a place, but they go, of course, in Chapter 6 under modes of transportation. Any comment?
Mayor, I think it's good to include this information, memorialize it. I would just suggest that we have a little more detail in it in a sense, and be happy to share that with folks in a written manner. But I would just, if this aspect where there were formal votes taken, if we could include that when that vote was taken, the actual date. I don't remember if there were formal votes, or we talk about resultantly discussions between the city and the county ended. I don't know if there was a particular, again, vote or just it was dropped. And then on line 4243 at the very end, it says offered to pay $7.6 million for, I would just insert the word, a one-time purchase of 2/5 of the county, the city's department. And again, just was there a formal vote to reject this proposal? And if there were, should include the date of that vote.
I'm for keep it simple. If you can keep it simple, I'm all for that. But I'd like to task you with
Sure.
updating it, if you would,
I'll be happy to do
and
that.
share that with all of us. And if we go to another, I don't know if it can be done before our afternoon meeting, or if not, then a subsequent meeting. All right. So, and again, I don't know if you also want to take on the task of suggesting where each of these paragraphs go, or Lauren, maybe you have a suggestion exactly.
Turn the consultant for that direction.
Okay. So if you'd be giving thought to that with considering that we would likely have just some minor edits to the 4 paragraphs. Thank you very much. So that actually concludes Chapter 6. The next chapter I'd like to go to is Chapter 7. This is our first look at Chapter 7, Environmental Protection. Let me get set up here. Chapter 7 is Environmental Protection. Jay Legree, Commissioner Legree has some suggested changes. As we go through this document, I will bring up his suggested changes for your consideration. And again, we'll go line by line. Chapter 7-2, or page 7-2. I have nothing. Page 7-3. 7-4. 7-5. 7-6. I'm picky on my map sizes. Can you enlarge that 10% so the margins are equal left and right? Although 3-hole punched.
Correct. We had left the margins to
Yep.
account for that, so we can either take in the side where the Atlantic Ocean is shown, or we can make it a full size on its own and just rearrange the layout.
I would say I withdraw my request and you just leave it alone. All right, would that be amenable to everybody? Page 7-7. There are no line numbers here. Let me just make reference to a couple things. This is coming from Commissioner Legree. As you know, he lives on Silver Lake. He also chairs the Boardwalk at Beach Committee. A few things coming from his notes, and that is under the first paragraph, Silver Lake, the very fifth line under Silver Lake. It mentions the outflow has ledger boards that regulate the water height as well as grates that protect the outflow pipe from debris. He would like remove the words ledger boards that regulate the water height as well as. Thus, this section would read after the semicolon, this outflow has grates that protect the outflow pipe from debris. The other thing he would like to clarify is the very next sentence. Silver Lake is a natural freshwater remnant of receding glaciers from a prehistoric ice age. So we're adding a prehistoric and deleting the last. Any objections to those two?
I just have a question on the ledger boards. What's the rationale for removing such a controversial issue?
You'd have to ask him. My assumption, because I haven't been down there late, is that the ledger boards have all been removed, and so that there is no mechanism there to gauge the level of the lake anymore.
Are those boards, Mayor, just out of curiosity, and then you can move on, is that the purview of the city?
No, well, Silver Lake is
Okay.
the purview of DENREC, and that's it.
So we don't touch it at
In the
all.
old days, there was literally fights
Yeah.
among the level of because you had, I'm not going to give names, but you had somebody in the lower Silver Lake that wanted it low because if it was high, he'd get flooding. But the people up in the finger wanted high because they want water in the finger. And so there was just kind of friction there. So unfortunately, nobody ever took charge of the height, and it was just whoever was down there last.
Thank you.
Okay. So what we can do is we can double check. I can double check with Jay. Let's make that changes, but double check with him. Okay. On the same page, under the paragraph for Lake Girard, the very second sentence starts with, it is filled and maintained by a combination of natural springs and stormwater runoff. Jay would like the following change. It is filled and maintained by a combination of stormwater runoff and groundwater ingress from the surrounding neighborhoods. That language pretty much mirrors what was used for Silver Lake, and Jay doesn't believe that natural springs actually feed Lake Girard. Now, I have always heard that it does. I don't know who we can check on this, Evan, if one of our DENREC contacts.
Would Todd Fritchman be a resource?
That might be. So I'll task you with that, city manager, and so we'll verify that also. The next page is 7-8. Down at the bottom, moderate risk areas and minimum risk areas, it says X, parenthesis shaded, and then under minimum risk, X, parenthesis unshaded. I'm not following what it's trying to describe there. Is it a placeholder, or is it actually referring to something?
That's the actual terminology that FEMA uses on its flood hazard maps. So there is a shaded area on those official maps that represents either the 0.2% or 500-year flood area, and then all other areas that don't have any shading whatsoever are considered flood zone X unshaded. So these are beyond that 0.2% or 500-year flood area and are considered to be areas of minimal flood hazard. So that's just the terminology that they
Okay.
themselves use.
So it is accurate
Yes.
and it's literal. Okay. Very good. We'll go to page 7-9, 7-10, 7-11, 7-12, 7-13, 7-14, 7-15, 7-16, 7-17. First sentence is under Tree City, USA. I know this is challenging because we put stuff in there and then with time, things change or need to get updated. And at some point, maybe we have to cut bait on some of these things. But Tree City, USA, I think we're year 31.
One, we are, yep.
So maybe we could change that. But then does that also require us to change Dover to 33? Because I don't have any confirmation there. Patrick?
I was just going to say, instead of using a reference there, should we, and I don't know I guess 30 years, what, just say since year.
Yeah, that's a
since
good idea. I think that's a good
92,
idea.
since 1992?
Holding the, or just holding this designation longer is the city of Dover, period. Would that be? Well, read again what you suggested, Patrick.
I just, since 1992, scratch for
92 or
30 years.
91? Do you know? Okay.
Since X year,
I think
whatever.
it may have been 91, but we can definitely find that out. But I
Right.
hear what you're saying. You're saying
Yeah.
use the year so that we don't have to say how many years.
Correct. And it would stay,
And then we could just say it's the only other municipality holding this designation longer is the city of Dover without saying how much longer. You know, so what? So what about Dover, you know?
and does that really even mean anything?
Yeah, right. So, or we could
Does,
say we're the
does,
second
does
longest.
mentioning Dover mean anything?
No, we could just take that out too.
I don't think so.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we could
It
just say
means
that,
we're number 2.
right, right.
Otherwise,
Have
we
to
might be
publicize
looked
that.
at as
Yeah,
number
right.
1. So if you're amenable, we'll change 30 years to since and put the date in. Who would know that?
I might be able to find it at the
At the Tree City USA site, they've got Dover is 32 years, and they've got Rehoboth is 30, so it's a 2-year spread, whatever. But it doesn't say what year anybody was inducted.
Well, let me task that also to city manager, if you don't mind, because you can check with Liz, if you don't mind. So we'll put since 19X, Rehoboth Beach has achieved Tree City USA designation, period. And leave off with the only other municipality. That all right?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Very good, thank you. Next page is 7-17. I had the same question about updating the entire paragraph where Governor Carney proclaimed April 30th, 2021 as Arbor Day. Again, at what point do we say we want to cut the bait and just have it? I think I'd prefer to have it updated.
You know, that was a dilemma for me in multiple places within here, and is that there are some specific time references, like even in the paragraph above on the commemorative tree program. And I'm sorry, I just noticed this. It should be commemorative tree, not trees, plural, I think. And anyway, it's got the data of what we've collected in 2019. So, I mean, I could certainly give you an updated figure if that's what we want to do, is have updated figures throughout.
Well, I'd like that whole paragraph updated. It's a year old. Since then, we've had our own Arbor Day ceremony for 2022. We planted, I thought, 10 trees. And I think this is where it could be appropriate that we put in that we got recognized for our 31st year as a tree city.
Yeah, so you want to change that entire paragraph about,
Yeah.
starting with Governor Carney, okay.
City manager, did you be tasked with that also?
Yeah, you can pick
Updating
that up out of.
7-18. Now Liz can always reach out to Commissioner Gay if she needs to.
So would you like to see back in that previous section on commemorative tree, would you like to see the data for what's been contributed, updated past 19?
Back at
Last
page
sentence.
717.
Yes, the last sentence under commemorative tree where it says in 2019, over 44,000 was donated and 50 trees were planted, to update that to what, to.
Yeah, well, let's go ahead and do it. So back on page 717, the very last paragraph under commemorative trees program, Commissioner Gay, you want to be tasked with doing that?
Okay, yeah, I can update the amount.
So if you would, if everybody tasked with something would send it to the city manager and the mayor, we'll compile everything and share it with Lauren. And then everybody here will get a copy of what the proposed are so that you can have final say-so. With that, under page 7-18, online tree survey, in the center of the page, approximately 83%. Oops, that's a personal note of a goal that I would like to start working toward. Page 719. The very top of the page, 719, it's the last sentences of the previous paragraph. I just wrote down tree canopy resolution. Do we want to make reference to it or include it, summarize it?
Where are you looking?
The very top two sentences on page 719. The analysis which utilized 2014 LiDAR data as the basis for its analysis indicated an urban tree canopy of 50.4% in the city.
And what do you ask?
Have we made mention anywhere in here about our approved, adopted resolution to increase the tree canopy?
The problem with that is the resolution was to increase it to something like 45%, and then this data comes out and says it's 50%, and everybody goes, okay, but guess we're done now. And what actually happened was the metrics are different. The technology is improved such that there has changed. I don't know if it's improved, but it drills down further. It sort of is able to track smaller trees and smaller green coverings, and therefore the number has risen everywhere, not just here. So the 50% is not analogous to whatever the previous number was when we wanted to get to 45. I guess our previous number was maybe in the high 30s or something like that.
So in 2011, the resolution said, in accordance with Title III, Chapter 10, blah, 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 commissioners do hereby recognize the city's existing forest canopy density of 32.75% and commit to developing and implementing a plan in cooperation with the citizens with the intention to grow the resource to 40% or greater over the next 10 years. So that was 2011. We're already there.
Yeah, we're like, okay, we're done. Which is, I don't think it's really true because first of all, there's you know, this is a citywide number, but it does represent a different type of technological analysis than was previously done.
Yeah.
So it's not an apples to apples comparison, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, then let's leave it alone, and if we want to update the resolution, then that's something that somebody could bring up. So we'll leave that alone. Under tree ordinance update, the very last sentence ends with, committee reviewed the latest and discussed remaining issues at their August 20th meeting. Formal review by the Board of Commissioners is expected to begin in early 2022. Can we just change it to formal review began in early 2022? So I was going to try to put and anticipated completion date of, but I think that's dangerous.
You don't want to jinx it, huh?
One other, just backing up for a second, I noticed we were updating this paragraph about the 2021 Arbor Day. We may
A
want to,
page?
7-18,
Yeah, update
Yes.
the photo.
Uh-huh.
update the photo also, or eliminate it, one of the two. But if we're going to change the date,
We
do have photos from this year.
Good point. Updated to a photograph that was taken this year.
And there's some good ones.
It just makes me a year older in that photograph.
but you're still there.
Well, we can use the ones of the kids planting the tree, and then you
There you go. There you go. Okay, so we'll just say began in early 2022, page 7-20. Seven 21. I have a question here down toward the bottom. There is a mention of, I call it Stokely, others Stockley, tomato. Stokely Park is on Silver Lake, but there's no mention of Silver Lake Park. Now, when you go to map 10, both parks,
And where do you have?
map 10 is this thing.
Yep.
And in the legend, it mentions number 10 is Silver Lake Park, and number 11, abutting it, is Stokely Street Park. So what jives here? Is 10 and 11 on this map really the same thing? I mean, we really haven't, I don't believe that we've segregated. I think the names have been interchangeable over the years.
Yeah.
Right.
And so the point is, again, the map says Silver Lake Park is identified and Stokely Street Park are identified, and yet page 7-21, which is table 7-2, only identifies Stokely Park. How do we resolve the discrepancy?
I have a further question on that in regards. This states city parks and open space inventory. Does that derive from the zoning map? Because we have the zoning classification of open space. And if you refer back to the approved zoning map, there are areas on the zoning map that are listed as open space that are not reflected in this list. And then conversely, also, I didn't realize or question the fact that we call the bandstand plaza protected space as open space. And the same true with the Grove Park Canal Dock. That is not zoned as anything. And then also Martin Lawns Park has a building on it and it's a parking lot. So again, I don't know how we best classify this. And also, if somebody could help me figure out where Surfside Park is, I'd appreciate it. I don't know that one. And then there's also a park on Scarborough Avenue Extended. And then on open space here, we don't list the beach. So I'm just curious as to what we're going to use as the classification in that regards. And we also talk about Deauville Beach, but if memory serves me correct, that's actually a leased piece of land. It is protected, but we lease that from the state. So again, I don't know if that makes a difference or not, the leasing aspect of that, but I just sort of, what is the criteria of how to classify this and what's the appropriate list?
So actually, this opens a can of worms. You've just articulated 4 or 5 questions that need to be addressed. The zoning map, that's map number 4 included in here, does of course have the open space. And I was just curious, looking at Stokely Park / Silver Lake Park, it shows the open space is one unified area,
Right.
not 2. So maybe there's
And then there, and again, how do we, should we connect it to or that? But also on the open space, on the zoning map, there's a number of, like the median strip on, is it Stokely, or, I'm not sorry, Stokely, but
Scarborough?
Scarborough is zoned open space, where the lighthouse is zoned open space. So I don't know what criteria we want to use, but using that phrase, open space, which in many people's minds would jump to the zoning map, again, just trying to be consistent in what we're talking about.
Or should Table 7-2, which you indicated is entitled City Parks and Open Space Inventory, maybe that should be divided into two items, a city parks inventory and then an open space inventory. I don't know, but go to map number 10. I know we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but map number 10 that has Silver Lake Park and Stokely Street Park also omits Cranberry Park.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
I was just gonna say that. Yeah.
And that Scarborough Avenue extended, there's a park there that's owned by the city, right? It's open space.
And actually, map 10 has the same entitlement or title as 7-2, which is city parks and open space. So here we've got two things referring to the same thing, one in words, one in map, that don't coincide.
Yeah, I don't think 7.2, Table 7.2 is supposed to be referring to the zoning context open space. I think it's open areas, so I don't know if open areas is a better term, city parks and open areas inventory, but it's not. There are certainly areas listed here that are open but are not zoned open space.
And just for clarification on Scarborough Extended, that was technically a street end, a neglected street end that was improved by the residents of the street rather than the city.
Okay.
Now, has that been given a name?
No,
There's no name or reference
not that I'm aware.
as a park officially.
And I have a question about Cranberry. I thought Liz had told me that Cranberry Park is often, the Garden of Navigators is actually not in Cranberry Park. Cranberry Park is only the part behind the houses on Olive, and that people make that mistake all the time, but that's the case. And here it's described as including that entire parkland, including Garden of the Navigators. Do we know which?
Well, my recollection from history is that Cranberry Park is the entirety
Okay,
of the end there, and then the Sister Cities Park came and intruded,
that is
consumed that, that's not the right, consumed some of that space.
Okay.
But that Cranberry Park is only the end. It doesn't, once you get a little farther to where the stairs go down Olive, then that, to me, is still part of Drawer Park.
oh, so it's, okay, all
That
right.
Cranberry Park does not go behind the Cochran's house. It does not
See, I
go
thought Liz
behind
told me just the opposite,
any
but okay.
house on the
Okay.
north side of Olive Avenue. So we've got a lot of questions here. Also, again, back to map 10, with the incongruity between the two, the map and table 7-2 is the map has public protected lands as an additional title, and it includes Baltimore Avenue restrooms. Well, again, if you're going to do that, why not the bandstand? Why not Delaware Avenue restaurant? So I think we need to
I guess
do
it
a
just,
little more study on this.
yeah, I just question the definitions. If there's protected public lands, and then we talk about open space inventory, city parks inventory, what are we really defining? And then also that, jumping to map 10, there's a notation on there, canal ownership under review. What's that about?
Can maybe, would it be wise for Lauren or Glenn to articulate what are the purposes of table 7-2 and the map so that we understand the purpose? If they're the exact same thing, then we should make sure that they reflect don't you think? Lauren, can you help us out here?
So the general intent of these is just informational, where parks are located and information about the location and what each area contains. I will note that both the Table 7-2 and Map 10 came to us in much the same format from the previous consultant, so we just updated it into the new format. And made any adjustments based on further input that we've heard over the last few months. The item on map number 10, the public protected lands category, if you will, I believe that the parks or locations under that list and shown in one shade of green or another on the map itself, they stem from a map or a data source that is called public protected lands. So this is likely a DNREC layer that has these particular places listed as being park or open space in perpetuity. I can verify that information. I would just have to go into double check the source file for that. But we can certainly update this to reflect the accurate parks, open spaces, what you would like to see on both the map and the table itself.
Well, here's a proposal, the Table 7-2. Just remove the title Open Space Inventory and just leave it City Parks. Why? Because every park there is named. There is no unnamed open space inventory there. I mean, they could overlap, you know, that Central Park is open space, okay? But to me, it's getting confusing. Just call it City Parks. I would like to see map 10 converted to just the pictorial illustrating 7-2 with only the city parks. Then if you want to do an additional map 10B that shows public protected lands, then maybe that could be all open lands as described on the zoning map and include Baltimore Avenue restrooms and the beach and all those things.
But Mayor, the bandstand is not a park, is it? I mean, Doval Beach is not a park.
Well,
per se.
I'm saying 10B would be
Would
open
include-
space.
Okay, so take them out of here and put them in
Open-
that.
That's just food for thought.
Okay.
I mean, what do we want? Because Lauren, this isn't one of the definitive requirements of the CDP that I recall.
You're correct. I believe that.
But we can massage it as we want.
Yes, I believe that state planning just recommends having a graphical representation of parks or open space or what have you. So some category of that just to provide a reference. Similarly, the inventory, if you will, but there's not specific requirements about what that would contain or look like.
Can you just title it City Parks and Public Space Inventory? That way it takes care of the beach and the boardwalk. Because those are public spaces, right?
Yeah, but so is the Delaware Avenue restroom and the bandstand and the medians and,
The street end pavilions on the boardwalk,
yeah.
Verrazano Park. I mean, again, I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but just what is the purpose of this and what are we trying to define and do we need it at all, I guess? It would be nice to know what we own or what we consider X.
Because we have this
Yeah,
that identifies open space, whatever it's called,
right.
01 Open Space District, because we have that, I think I'm willing to just identify in Table 7.2 city parks and map 10 city parks illustrated.
That was going to be my recommendation, Mayor, because you'll recall back in 2021, we actually went through the adoption of Chapter 195, which outlines parks and recreation. And in that, during that process, we defined park, and in that definition of park, we call out all the areas that we deem to be a city park. So for consistency,
Do you
maybe
include all that are listed on Table 7-2?
the bandstand plaza is not. So in the definition, we have Mariners or Surfside Park, and Commissioner Gossett, just to address your question about Surfside Park. Surfside Park is the triangle just north of the Henlopen condos.
But it's the same as Mariners Park.
Correct. And in the code, we say Mariners, in parentheses, Surfside Park. We also list the Lewis Rehoboth Canal Bank, which is along Canal Street.
Yeah, yeah.
Central Park, Grove, parentheses, Shaw Park.
Right, Central, Grove, okay,
The Grove Park Canal Dock,
okay.
Deer Park.
Is Grove Park Canal Dock separate than Grove Park?
Yes. Yep.
Okay,
Stokely Street Park, and here we actually include parentheses, Country Club Estates.
but no mention of Silver Lake Park.
No mention of Silver Lake Park.
You have Martin's Lawn, you don't have Martin's Lawn on there?
Cranberry Park, no Martin's Lawn. Martin's Lawn's at the end, yes. Cranberry Park, Lake Gerard Park, Lee Street Park, Deauville Beach, Teardrop, in parentheses, Silver Lane Park, and Martin's Lawn Park.
Is Martin's
Here-
Lawn Park called park in that code, or is it just Martin's Lawn?
It's called park in the code, yes.
Okay, didn't know that.
I'm sorry, did you get Deer Park?
Yes, Deer Park.
Deer Park, Martin's Lawn Park. Okay, so actually, we've got some additions here. Lewis Rehoboth Canal Bank Park, right? And the other addition is Canal Dock. What do you call it? Canal Dock Park in Grove Park?
Yeah, Grove Park Canal Dock.
Oh, it's there. It's right there under my
Kevin, what's
note.
the site on that from the code?
Chapter 195-1 definitions.
Thanks.
Yep. All listed under park.
A bandstand is not
Is not, no.
considered a park. So I would say that comes off Table 7-2.
Yes, I would say, I would think so.
We still have that discrepancy with map 10 citing Stokely Street Park and Silver Lake Park. Note that Table 7-2 should be corrected that it's Stokely Street Park, not just Stokely Park. And I get a little frustrated because we've just mentioned two names for Surfside Park and Mariners Park. But I think all the parking maps referred to that as Surfside Drive,
Or Surfside Place.
Surfside Place. And yet if you take away Mariners Park, then you booger up the Mariners Christmas tree that's placed there. So maybe you just have to put parentheses, add the two names, Surfside Park and Mariners Park. I don't know where they came up with some of these names, Cranberry Park, Teardrop Park. I mean, I've known that little park over there because I've known about the pier for years. Most people have no clue where it is. It's kind of a little gem, so I hate telling where it is too loud. So what's our resolution here? Do we want to update 7-2 with city parks only? Remove the title open space inventory and then update map 10 similarly with parks only, identified and illustrated?
Yeah, and I would say yes, to keep it consistent with what's in the code.
And-
And that is the guideline.
And then just allow this to suffice to identify open space.
Right.
That'd be all right, Lauren, you think? Okay.
And then we started with the canal ownership.
So I'm looking at an email that I sent Lauren on February 13th of this year, and it says, Lauren, Henlopen Acres has begun to review the draft Rehoboth Beach CDP. Remember, we have to share the draft with local jurisdictions. Henlopen Acres has begun to review the draft Rehoboth Beach CDP. I assume that because I also represent Henlopen Acres, they reached out to me with a question about the city boundaries shown in the various maps and exclusively on map 1. That's the city boundary. They provided me with the attached resolution and map that has been recorded, along with some newspaper clippings from the early 1970s. The documents suggest that Henlopen Acres annexed a portion of the canal along its border that is shown in the draft CDP as within Rehoboth Beach's boundary. I do not know if you have any other information relating to this area of the canal, but it seems this is an issue that will need to be addressed. So there's it's actually really interesting. There was the governor in the early 70s at the time authorized municipalities that have borders on the canal to annex the portion of the canal to the midpoint of the canal where that municipality butts the canal. Rehoboth Beach's charter required at the time that the city go through a public hearing process and could only annex after that process. Henlopen Acres charter did not. So according to the newspaper account, Rehoboth Beach set a public hearing day to annex. Henlopen Acres, one day before that, had their meeting and annexed the portion of the canal. So the question is, who got there first? But we're only talking about the midpoint of the canal where it abuts Henlopen Acres is what they seemingly annexed. And there are recorded documents that Henlopen Acres had on file that they shared with us, but it's kind of left as an open question because the newspaper accounts from the News Journal in 1973, June 21, 1973, indicate that Rehoboth Beach was in process of also annexing the canal. So it's a little bit of a question there. So we figured rather than do all the research that it's probably going to take to figure out exactly what happened, we just leave it as a hashed area saying it's a little unclear.
Well, all those documents are in the appendix,
Right.
I believe,
And I also spoke with the Office of State Planning about this and how we've depicted it on the maps along with a footnote. So that shows up on all maps except for the map 4, which is just the reproduction of the zoning map. All of those have that hatched area and the footnote. And there's language in, I believe it's chapter 1 or 2 that speaks to this in a brief paragraph. So this is how state planning has recommended we address it at this point, because obviously there's going to be back and forth as far as research about what Glenn just discussed, which likely would not occur before the certification deadline. If there is a change and there's a determination further about this, it can be modified in a future plan, but state planning is satisfied with how this is being addressed.
all right.
I've also, based on Glenn, your suggestion, I've provided that information back to Henlopen Acres, where the original comment came from, to their town manager, just to let them know that that's how we were addressing it, and I have had no follow-up from him of any concerns. So presumably, if we don't hear anything else, they don't have an issue with how it's being identified.
I actually chatted with him and the mayor, and they both thought this was a fine resolution of it. Yeah. For now,
Right.
anyway.
Thank you. So when we get to the appendix, there's another opportunity if we choose to delve back into this. As far as this goes, I think we have 95% of our resolution here.
Do we have any land that's owned by the city that's not developed that could be? In other words, we're not going to develop the parks or
That's
anything.
not developed.
Other than the parks.
Other than an
I don't
odd
think- I don't
lot
think
here,
so,
But not
yeah.
owned by the city. I don't think there's any city land. Right?
So everything's accounted for in here then?
Everything's accounted for in the zoning map.
Okay, thank you.
The one thing that's not resolved in my mind is this Silver Lake Park, Stokely Street Park. I don't know if our historians at the museum can have any insight into it, so we could definitively say this is what it's called, and forever into the future, we just call it that one or the other rather than both. Any thoughts?
So are you saying to just, because there is a Stokely Street Park listed in a brochure for the city, right?
Well, whenever I talk about it, I talk about Silver Lake Park, so.
It says here, it's a
Yeah.
pretty small park, but it's very quiet. There's a nice jungle gym, a slide, an area for kids.
Right.
The best part is that it's right next to the walk. I had to finish reading
And we're
it.
going to be doing a tree tour on it. It's going to be called Stokely Park, a tree tour. So, at least that's.
It's also listed on TripAdvisor as one of the things to do in Rehoboth.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's true.
Well, again, we've got no mention of Silver Lake Park on table 7.2, and yet we've said we want to coordinate it with map 10, which has both named on there. I don't know, who developed this map 10, do we know? Why would we get, in fact, where 10 is, where the number 10 is physically, is private lots, residential lots. So that's where I don't understand. Did it, during Country Club Estates, did it used to be called Silver Lake Park before it was developed?
They have a Silver Lake tot lot in Stokely Street Park.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, well, can we put a big question mark
Yeah, and
there?
I can check maybe with Marine or Country Club Association, see if they know.
If they have any idea, yeah.
Mayor Liz is also going to join us, and hopefully she can provide some clarity as well.
Clarity with that, okay. Very good. Anything else on 721? The next item is 722. 723. Under Lake Gerard Playground, 2/3 of the way down that first paragraph, Lake Gerard Playground, it mentions that the new play area designed for children 2 to 5 years of age will be ADA accessible and inclusive. I'd suggest we consider saying that it is ADA accessible as if it's 100% complete. I know there's 1% not, but, and then, so the new play area designed for children 2 to 5 years of age is ADA accessible and inclusive. The project incorporates new landscaping and fencing. And maybe that's just period there. You leave out the project's completion date is anticipated. Just delete that last sentence. Next to the last sentence, Lake Gerard Accretion Restoration Project, maybe I circled this on hold. Maybe I circled that just because of my desire to get that thing going again, not stagnant. So I don't know whether putting the word, substituting for on hold pending gives us more hope and optimism or not. But I prefer pending. 724. 725. The very last sentence, this is under electric vehicle charging stations, kind of commingles mention of electric vehicle charging stations that are city-owned and those that are private-owned. I don't know the wisdom of that, but I guess, you know, if Hannah House, where is that? That's Dewey, isn't it? Is that the Hyatt Hannah House? Belmore Inn, is Belmore Inn for public use or for patrons only? I don't know, read it and see whether there should be any additions mentioning that are all public usage, question mark? Or we just leave it alone?
Can we back up a step? I'm
Well,
sorry, I mean, I
finish,
just-
can we finish that one? And then we'll go back for you. Is there any other edits people would like?
I'm just unclear of what happened with the Hannah House here. Is that the Anna Hazard House mushed
Hannah
together?
House- The Hannah House, according to Airbnb, Sleep 16, it's 2 blocks from the boardwalk. Welcome to 306 Bayard.
Yeah, I just saw that too.
It's a private house.
All righty
Buy it.
then.
Maybe we should just say there are currently some public vehicle charging stations, the city limits, at the convention center, and scratch the rest.
I'd rather do that than mention
Yeah.
the individual ones.
I have an outdoor outlet.
'Cause we'll be over. So reword it there, Susan, if you would, or Patrick. There are currently some
Public.
vehicle charging stations
Within city limits.
within city limits, period.
Period.
The city plans to add additional electric vehicle charging stations throughout the city.
Yeah, I think that's right, yeah.
Okay?
Okay, I'm sorry, backing up to
yes.
723, sorry, I missed this first time around. On the bullet list of the ongoing projects.
Yeah.
Lake Gerard master planning, is that, remind me, is that in the budget for this current fiscal year? I didn't think it was. No. Okay, so that needs to come out.
Where, exactly where are you?
The third
Point-
bullet on page 7-23, where it says ongoing and future open space and recreation
Oh,
projects
down
include.
at the bottom. Okay.
Third bullet, yeah, the bottom of the page, the third bullet says Lake Gerard Park master planning. But that's not in, Evan just said, confirmed that that's not actually in the current fiscal year budget. So would we take it out altogether? I mean, I don't even know that it's pending.
Pen,
No.
Would it, so it doesn't get lost, should we just take out the FY references on all of them? Because one that says on hold and, you
Right.
know,
yeah, on hold doesn't have a year, does it? Well, if we know that we're absolutely going to do something in a fiscal year, then yeah, I think that's appropriate. But you're right, for master planning, I think we even have to have a conversation among us first, is what does it mean, and are we going to do it, and are we going to fund it?
Right.
Now, see, when I hear master planning, my mind goes back to that Lake Gerard fancy park.
Yeah,
What was-
exactly. Yeah.
That's, but see, I look at I look at that, oh, hi, Liz. You snuck in. I also look at that master planning as, I thought we were gonna look at something citywide for master planning for all our parks. Do you recall? No? But this one specifically, Lake Gerard Master Planning. Right. That's was not well received before, and I think we would have to put that in front of the commissioners. So that definitely needs to be, just take the date off it, and maybe that would suffice. Susan, what do you think?
I mean, if we want to keep it on there, is because it's,
Again, just so that these don't get lost in future iterations or what have you, I would suggest just taking off the reference to the fiscal years. And the list there, there's no priority to them, but again, have been talked about, have been discussed, and will continue to be discussed, I'm sure, with no resolution.
Are you okay with removal of the dates? So we'll,
I think it's fine removing the dates because I mean, some of these have changed multiple times already on when they were projected to be done. But my recollection regarding the Lake, I could be completely off here, but the master planning was not just related to Lake Gerard, but all of the lakes and the stormwater planning of what was going into them. And I thought that is why we put the accretion restoration project on hold until that master plan was finished. So I don't think it had to do with the park over on the east side of Lake
oh,
Gerard.
there was a plan. No, there was a couple of
No,
years ago.
I know there was a plan, but we dismissed that, I think, almost immediately.
Right, which is one of the reasons why I wonder if it should come out altogether, unless we think we're going to put that back with a different
well,
design.
we've never formally withdrawn it.
Okay.
And so we have to decide whether there's enough interest to bring it back up
Right.
and then reject it or not. I could see taking out all the dates, and I could also see adding another bullet that makes reference to master planning, park master planning for the entirety of the city. So there's two things for me: Lake Gerard Park master planning for that proposed park in the shadow of the Henlopen condos, and then overall park master planning citywide. And how would you word that? Citywide park master planning. All right, thank you, Susan. Back to 724, 725. 726, Commissioner Commissioner Jay. Legree would like something. He's chair of the Beach and Boardwalk Committee. Under Dark Sky Community, he would like the entirety of the last two sentences in the first paragraph removed, starting with, in 2020, the Beach and Boardwalk Committee started researching lighting changes on the boardwalk, and ending with, the Environment Committee further recommended approval of this initiative at its January 14, 2021 meeting. Now, you could, Ed, as chair of the Environment Committee, you can decide whether that stays in there or not, but Jay wanted to make sure that the attribute to initiating Dark Sky Initiative did not come from the Boardwalk and Beach Committee. So he wanted it more generic, so that top paragraph, in other words, would read merely, one of the 2010 CDP initiatives included city policies for lighting, stating the city should use environmentally responsible outdoor lighting and promote responsible legislation, public policy, and standards for such lighting in Rehoboth, period. And then leave the second paragraph. Ed, do you have any qualms about that? Anybody have any qualms about that proposed change?
No, I certainly don't.
All right. Thank you. So we go to page 727. This is where,
If I could add just
Yeah.
a general comment, there's two things here that, and I don't know whether they need recognition or mention. It would seem to me this is where they would be if we decide to put it in. But the city went through a plastic straw elimination campaign, and there's no mention of that in here whatsoever. Whether that needs to be mentioned or not, I think it's environmentally sound, and there was a lot of effort and energy and money spent on the campaign. So I did not see it mentioned, or whether the environmental committee feels it's necessary to be a part of that or not. And the other thing is with regards to sea level rise and beach protection, whatever, and I know this could be a touchy subject, but there's no discussion at all of beach tags or control or what have you. So I don't know whether that is something that needs to be included in the future for 10 years?
The beach tags, I'd prefer to defer on that because of some situations with some of our state legislators. And I don't want to open a can of worms until we've discussed that with them. So if you don't mind, well, I'd like to defer on that. Ed, as chair of the Environment Committee, would you entertain Commissioner
Yeah,
Gossett's?
absolutely. I just did a search and Commissioner Gossett's right, it's not mentioned in here, so it certainly should be.
Would you entertain writing something up for next meeting
Will do.
and then also where would it go? Maybe it goes right after dark sky community. Greenhouse gases.
Did we also do an elimination of plastic bags, or was that the county?
That's the
State.
State, okay.
Yeah.
I
Alrighty,
would
thank you.
recommend placing those somewhere other than after the dark sky community. This section is organized with like air resources, land resources and whatnot. So perhaps somewhere in the land resources section would be more appropriate.
Okay. So we're going to leave that up to you when we get something. Ed, if you would send that to
Yeah,
Evan and me, and thank you. Back to 727, this is our listed goals for Chapter 7, as well as our action items. And I guess I have a question on item C, action items. It says begin Silver Lake recovery using buffer planning, dredging, and regulatory buffer zone. Am I not attuned to what's going on in Silver Lake? Because I know that we have accomplished buffer planning and dredging up in the figure, and even regulatory buffer zones, right? We did that
more than that, about 8 years ago.
10 years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
So is it really, so I had a question. One, should it be past tense? Should it be
It's not an action.
Lake Gerard instead of Silver Lake?
Or should it be continue?
And,
Or continue,
Yeah.
you know?
but is dredging though, is that, in Silver Lake, that's a responsibility of DENREC now, correct? And Lake Gerard, I guess is still, or there's questions about it, whether it's Army Corps or city-owned property there, so.
Well, maybe some of the wording on C would be continue pursuit. You know, consider pursuit of Silver Lake recovery using buffer planning, dredging, and regulatory, so that we're not committing to something that we can't
Is
do.
this something that's being discussed in that Lakes project that you all are doing, Evan?
Yeah, certainly a look at best management practices is all being considered and would be ultimately recommended in the Lakes Management Plan, so.
So we would
So is that
serious,
why it's here? I'm sorry.
So what?
go ahead.
I'm sorry, you go.
I was just going to clarify, so we would be seriously looking at regulatory buffer zones?
We
See,
already
that,
have
see,
them.
we have
that's definitely in the past.
Yeah.
So somehow we need to either break that out or
Unless you
just
want to
remove it.
dredge it up again.
Or just remove it.
Yeah.
So really continue pursuit of buffer planning and dredging or something. But I would say remove the regulatory buffer zone because that is in the past. So then it's a matter of how do you address, do you have any better wording that you'd want to contribute?
Well, I think action item B is pretty broad enough that it could be applicable towards the lakes.
I don't know, I think the lakes, if you're gonna, if we've got a plan that's in the works and it's a major plan, I think the lake should be called out. But maybe they should both be called out together.
Yeah, I mean, one of the most important things, on my radar is that accretion project at Lake Gerard, and that's not spelled out at all as an action item.
Well, that's back, where was it? Well, that's mentioned earlier, but it's not an action item, is that what you're saying?
Correct.
It's because it's listed as under ongoing projects, even though it's on hold. I think that's probably why it didn't get carried forward to an action, because action's already been taken, even though it's on hold. But I think if there were going to be an action item related to things ongoing, it should be both lakes.
Well, I would say make them both.
Would you just say something like begins or continues Silver Lake and Lake Gerard sustainability and recovery efforts or something like that? Just, just mentioning both lakes, but it's about recovery and sustainability.
So, sustainability and recovery,
I think that's fine, yeah.
what, activities, what'd you say?
I think I said efforts, but activities would probably be fine.
Efforts. Yeah, let's do that. By the way, I do intend to talk with the city manager and do intend to further address the accretion project that's been put on hold. It's time to start talking about it again. And of course, it's a budget item, so we want to make sure we bring that to the forefront before our next discussion on budgetary items.
Still on item C, if I may, Mayor.
Yes.
Is it, we talked about continue or Silver Lake or whatever wording there. Again, should it be, may I suggest, evaluate the lake recovery, buffering, planting, dredging, and evaluate and regulatory buffer zones as to their effectiveness? Because that just says continue doing whatever we're doing, but there's no, if you will, monitoring or evaluation of if any of this is effective or it's getting the results we wanted or something of that nature. It's an action item in that regard as opposed to just keep doing it.
Patrick, you're thinking that belongs to us rather than the state?
Well, again, there's ownership question, I guess, or management questions with Lake Gerard now. Silver Lake is owned by the state, but the shoreline is owned by the city, most of it. Again, I'm just questioning to use the phrase, monitor Silver Lake or lake recovery is kind of, I won't say kicking the can, as opposed to evaluate, like, we made a decision, we implemented these plans, are they doing what we expected them to do? Do they need adjustment? Are they effective? That kind of thing.
I think I can be comfortable with just generic continued sustainability and recovery efforts for Lake Gerard and Silver Lake. If you want more specificity, then you say such as, and further investigating buffer planning and dredging or something. For me, the regulatory buffer zones is in the past.
This is maybe an unrelated question, but I thought on an annual basis, and I think during COVID, it got pushed back and it should probably come back, but I thought the guys from Envirotech on an annual basis gave us a report of the health of the lakes. And to my knowledge, that hasn't happened in a couple of years.
No, I think he did something last fall, didn't he?
All those Zoom meetings are just kind of like,
No, actually, he was here, yeah.
was it in person?
I am remembering one in person, but.
Yeah, that's why I'm thinking it was.
Yeah, but there was a time we went through when we were having in-person meetings last summer.
Yeah.
But I don't know, you may be right, it may have been more than a year.
Well, that's part of the contract we pay for to Envirotech.
Yeah,
Annual
right.
report, so.
Yeah. Need to check to see when the last one was.
Rather late, but I'd like to acknowledge that City Arborist Liz Lingo joined us. I don't know how long ago, but she's been with us a while, so thank you for being here. So what can we, how can we bring to conclusion action item C? Again,
I think it's, if, Envirotech, I think, is already kind of doing some of it, but to go along with Patrick Goss's language, you could say something like continue to implement and evaluate Silver Lake and Lake Girard recovery and sustainability efforts, something like that.
I think that language works.
is that all right, Patrick?
Yep, that's fine.
Got that, Lauren?
I believe so.
All right, thank you very much. On that same page, I underline H, evaluate the feasibility of adopting an upland wetland buffer requirement. Can anybody explain that a little bit?
Is that related to the state recommendation? There were some on the plus review, and unfortunately, they were, I'm not sure what they specifically recommended were feasible because it was 100 feet or something. I mean, it was,
The state, the DENREC comments recommend that the city develop and adopt an ordinance requiring a 100-foot vegetated buffer from all wetlands, water bodies, and waterways for new development where practicable. This is a general comment that we get on any comprehensive plan comments from them typically. Generally, I don't like putting the 100 feet or something like that into the recommendations and basically requiring that particular item. I think just having it be more general to consider, review, consider this type of a wetlands buffer or something like that is more appropriate. That gives some latitude toward the appropriateness as well as the width of that buffer. But that does stem from not only this comment, but also a comment that we received during the pre-plus review, which is back at the very start of this CDP process. We submitted the existing CDP to the state, and the plus group reviewed the existing plan and gave comments that they would like to see addressed. So that particular item references both of those documents.
Again, I think that our earlier discussion of regulatory buffers takes care of this item. But I have a question about this proposal by the county. Is that only for new construction, or is it apply retroactively to all existing? Because our 100-foot buffer, and we have 100-foot deep lots, I mean, it renders everybody grandfathered or something. So I don't care to have it in there, I guess. I mean, the way it's worded is evaluate the feasibility, which is comparable to consider. And we know consider versus contracting have.
Well, in order to meet the plus review, I think it's got to remain, correct?
We don't have to do everything they recommend.
Correct. It's a recommendation from DENREC. So if you're so inclined, we can just, in response to that, say noted the city does not feel it's appropriate at this time, or something to that effect. So we do not have to have that included specifically. We just have to respond to the plus letter.
But again, Glenn, haven't we, can't part of our response be that we've been there, done that?
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't come up with 100-foot, but we came up with what? Was it 10 foot? We came up with something.
yeah, okay.
But that keeps growing, and a lot of residents are not happy with that.
Happy with what?
It
What
being
keeps
more
going?
than what it once was.
No, the 10
No.
feet is what was adopted.
There was no setback from the lake edge, but I think it was a CDP item possibly that we addressed regulatory buffers and came up with 10 feet. You have to be at least 10 feet
started as
No structures within 10 feet of the lake. Therefore, you could not
The recommendation was
affix a
20,
dock
Right.
to the,
and then it
to the
got
shore.
changed.
Yeah.
I feel like there was like a rear yard setback of like 5 or 6 feet, and they built right up to that and looked like even closer, but then the recommendation of the planning commission, I think, was 20 feet, and the commissioners settled on 10 feet.
So again, I think we've already addressed it. They're just unawares.
But I guess that's partially how we can respond, is that, you know, given our small lot sizes and depths, that anything greater than what we've already done probably isn't appropriate. I don't know. I mean, but as Lauren says, it's a recommendation, so you don't have to have it in the CDP if it's a recommendation, but we do have to respond to it in our plus response letter.
Well, that's where I suggest that consider taking H out. I'm ready to move on. If nobody's going to agree, then we're going to leave it alone.
Mayor, I've got an item before H, if
But-
you don't mind.
So H, we're going to leave alone. Okay?
I'm indifferent on H.
It says evaluate.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Look at it.
okay.
And it doesn't have a specific number like the DINREC letter does, so it doesn't commit us to
Yeah,
anything.
okay, very good. Commissioner Szymanski, go ahead.
Sure. Looking at F and G, both of these are, things that would probably be considered in a sustainable climate action plan. And I know the City Environment Committee has recommended that we initiate the process for that. So I don't know if that should be, if we want to reference that somewhere. F and G probably fall under it. There's a few others that do as well. I think U, possibly T, V. But it also made me, reminded me that there is page 713, talks about the statewide climate action plan, which is incorrectly worded on here. Said the state is currently developing. It has been developed, and I think it was adopted in November of 2021. So if you wouldn't mind.
713, and just restate that, please.
Yeah, the top of the page, statewide climate action plan, it says the state is currently developing its first climate action plan, that it's already been adopted by the state, and it was adopted in November of 2021.
So the state has
has-
adopted its first climate action plan in 2021.
So I think if we want to be serious about having our own climate action plan, it might be appropriate to state that here, and then mention it as an action item.
Why don't you draft a short paragraph articulating that, and we can insert it in there. And again, as you say, that'll reinforce the action item. Anything else on 727 with that?
A question on,
Yes.
on item I. It says, begin transitioning the city's vehicle fleet to electric vehicles when possible. And Lauren, you made a comment earlier about you're hesitant to include like 100-foot specifics or what have you. But I would just, is it possible, or is it too much of a stretch to say, begin transitioning electric vehicles, an all-electric vehicle fleet by a goal of, say, 2027? That's our CIP window of 5 years, so that, a real goal or a hard goal was, but other than, it's like begin transitioning with no real end or real goal in sight. Is that something that's too aspirational, or that we should make a firm commitment that we're going to do something? And is this the place to do it?
I guess I like it more generic. When I went to New York City and toured the waste department's building, and because they had new electric garbage trucks.
Right.
And it wasn't what I thought. I thought that they just plugged them in and everything. They're actually run by small diesel engines that run hydraulics. But but they're called electric vehicles. You know, they save energy and they're cleaner and everything. And for like $1.2 million per truck, I don't see us ever going that route. So I would temper, you know, when possible, we do what we can do. And, you know, we've got the two small ones now. Then we have a car, I think, that's electric. What is our electric inventory today?
So we have, I believe, 2 now of the smaller vehicles that are used for trash collection on the boardwalk. Those are
Pickup trucks.
fully electric. Other than that, we only have hybrids, some hybrid vehicles. I believe we have 2 hybrid police vehicles. The concern from the city mechanic's perspective is it certainly requires a special expertise to be able to work on a hybrid vehicle because of the battery components. So until there's more information out there in terms of how to maintain some of those vehicles and what the city's capable of doing without having to send it out to a repair shop, there's been a little bit of hesitancy towards going fully electric with some vehicles. And then, Mayor, you mentioned some vehicles are limited in terms of capabilities. And we do certainly have some equipment that requires, you know, certain load requirements and things like that for water, wastewater department, which at this point, I don't know that there are any electric vehicles that are capable of providing what we need.
I'm fine with the wording. It's kind of demonstrative, you know, begin transitioning, but it also says when possible, so there's an out there.
Right.
Patrick?
That's, I mean, it is what it is. If we don't have a goal, we don't have to meet it, so that's fine.
But I'm kind of curious, in practice, when we have a vehicle, without regard to what kind it is, that's come up for replacement, do we look electric first?
We do. We certainly look at hybrids. And it at least these last couple of years, it comes down to what's available to us.
Yeah.
And this year in particular, we did not purchase any replacement vehicles because there was no market.
Yeah.
What about with our leased vehicles from Enterprise? We're still leasing from them? And
Yes.
so do they also offer all electric or hybrids?
They offer hybrids, yes. They do offer some fully electric vehicles, but none of those vehicles are ones that we actually need in our fleet. They tend to be extremely small and compact.
Okay. 728.
A question on there on item L. It says, investigate how to fund replacement of trees and restoration of sidewalk systems. To me, those are 2 separate issues.
I'd like them split into 2,
Yeah.
yes.
And don't we already have a very strong established fund for replacement trees or a vehicle there that?
Well, we have several, but I don't, it's not enough for a comprehensive, if we were going to do it across the whole city, then, you know, it takes even more city budget to be devoted to it. So we do have funds, but they're not enough.
So investigate how to increase funds or dedicate, or it just seems to me that it's.
How are you going to divide it up? Are you going to have one that says investigate restoration of the sidewalk system, or?
I would suggest, yes, that the sidewalk is separate. Now, how did this come about? Is it specific to restoration of sidewalks that are uprooted by trees?
I don't know where, yeah.
So I would just, like Commissioner Gossett said, just divide it into 2 topics.
But then in that case, I think you do have to say street trees, because I think that's what it means, right? Wasn't that the intent here, was for street trees?
I would think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or we should make it such.
Right, yeah.
So are you okay with investigate how to fund replacement of street trees? Is that?
I mean, it's not just replacement, right? It's new ones too. More new than replacement.
I think it's less about replacement and more about a cohesive plan.
Right, right. Yeah, so But the problem is if you say something like create a cohesive plan for street trees, then it sort of gets back up to the number D, which is preparing a community forest plan. So, I mean, I wouldn't mind it being, especially if it's going to be next to the sidewalk action item, I wouldn't mind it being called out separately, but I guess it should say, consider a plan, all right? Yeah, you want, yeah, please.
You can keep it separate from an urban forestry plan because that's
Okay.
way more comprehensive. So we could write something, develop a street tree planting and maintenance plan. And then that would include how many we want to plant a year, where the funding is coming from, how we're maintaining them, and maybe our overall stocking goal, if it's 80%, 50%, which I think we're above that now. And that would be, I want to say, a lot simpler than urban forest management plan, but a component of it as well.
So it'd be, say it again, develop.
Yeah, reiterate that for Lauren.
Oh, don't ask me that now.
I got the first word, develop.
Yeah, I got the first one.
Let's see.
Comprehensive.
Develop a comprehensive street tree planting and maintenance plan.
Right, okay,
And then I think we can work the details out after that.
right. That's good. I like that.
The reason I came in though was like 20 minutes ago. So I don't know if you guys are okay with me butting in and rewinding, or if you want to stop. It was just minor comments. Or I can save them for another time.
No, is it in chapter 7?
Yes, it was the parks. wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the parks time.
Yeah,
But you guys were on a roll. So I
Let's,
didn't butt in.
we've only got half a page left.
Okay.
And then we'll go back to
I'll
you.
sit quietly.
Okay. No, you don't have to sit quietly. So now we need, if we're in agreement to splitting L into two, then we need wording for the sidewalk system. To me, restoration of the sidewalk system maybe needs to be a little more specific, such as investigate, essentially, what do we want to do? Investigate how to better maintain our public sidewalks. So if that's the goal, what is the wordsmithing that we might want to use?
I think the way it's currently written could be misleading for homeowners that have damaged sidewalks because of street trees. It almost makes it sound like we're gonna pay to restore it for them.
Well, and I'd like to expand this beyond just street trees, just damage by street trees. All sidewalks are better maintained.
And at some point, should we also include the aspect of coming into ADA compliance, street ends or something of that nature? Is that, I don't know that that's been addressed.
Well,
I mean, we have a very strong ongoing program.
It just made me question whether I've overlooked specific action items to all sidewalk issues, the ADA compliance, discontiguous sidewalks. You know, that was in the previous one. I'd like it back in here, and so I don't know whether we've overlooked that or not. If so, then I'd like to collectively look at it for the next meeting and see about adding all the sidewalk issues in a row as an action item. Discontiguous sidewalks, better maintenance, ADA compliance. What else
Sidewalk-
can?
Oh,
what-
I
No,
apologize.
go ahead.
Sidewalks are addressed more completely in chapter 6.
6 modes of transportation.
Yes.
So
That particular action item L, I believe it was related to the sidewalks, specifically related to the uprooting or the root system of displacing the sidewalk. In the transportation section itself, we do have a section, for example, specifically discussing the ADA compliance or update. the ADA transition plan, things of that nature.
Okay, well then, I want to go back and after these meetings, take a look at chapter 6 to see if indeed there is adequate reference to all the sidewalk issues we just talked about. Actually, just chapter 6, transportation, there is multiple times mention of enhanced maintenance of sidewalks. So maybe we're taking care of that. Study the feasibility of the city assuming responsibility for constructing and maintaining public sidewalks to address safety and uniformity. Does anybody recall whether there's mention of addressing discontiguous sidewalks? That was in the previous CDP. I would like to see that back in the CDP. You know, after all, we are promoting ourselves as good for the health, walkability, and enhanced maintenance of sidewalk is just not specific enough.
It talks about it in the language, 6.9 and 6.10, but it doesn't specify anything as an action item.
Yeah, 6.9 mentions sidewalk inventory on map 7, snapshot for connectivity. Page 6-10, there are blocks in the city where discontiguous sidewalks are present. So I guess I would like to take it on to see if we can't have an action item added under Chapter 6 Transportation that directly reflects discontiguous. But then I would also like to address, Patrick, the ADA. Do you recall any other references in here to ADA? So I think
Top of my head, I'm sure there are, but
well, page 614, ADA transition plan. This is just talking about an ADA transition plan and it's being updated. But again, under the action items, so if everybody would agree, let's take a look at adding discontiguous sidewalks back into as an action item under Chapter 6, as well as some wording. Patrick, if you could help us with wording about ADA.
okay.
Perhaps be worked into action item E, study the feasibility of the city assuming responsibility for constructing and maintaining public sidewalks to address safety and uniformity. You could also
Yeah, that,
you could add
address discontiguous sidewalk. I'd like that to be a separate item because E may or may never happen, you know, but, so
ADA and
add ADA plus discontiguous sidewalks.
It makes reference to ADA compliance and the need for them, but also the challenges with us having a lot of trees with root systems.
What page are you on?
That is on 610. It's the last paragraph under the section which begins on 6.9,
right.
pedestrian infrastructure.
So I would just like to memorialize that or reflect that as an action item. So Patrick, you're going to do up an ADA something and I'll do up a discontiguous sidewalk something. Very good. Let's see where we are. 728, we split L into two. We've agreed to go backwards to Chapter 6 and add discontiguous sidewalks and ADA. Under K,
If I may
Yes,
interrupt
ma'am.
before we move on, since we're splitting that, could I recommend that we remove the reference to sidewalks from this chapter in particular, since sidewalks are talked about in the prior chapter, and just leave all related action items related to them there?
Are there others?
What, that was chapter 6 it was in?
Six, yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
since
I'm
that.
not even sure we have to relocate it to Chapter 6, but if we find the appropriate area in there, we certainly can consider that, because otherwise, Chapter 6 does mention addressing enhancement of maintenance and all that stuff. Now, maybe that should be an action item. Okay. Anything else? I've got under K, page 728, the very first item. I added, consider adoption of standards of dark sky hyphen like. I put that in because that's what our resolution that we adopted indicated, that we were not going the route of dark sky fixtures directly, but we were going to use dark sky-like fixtures.
So does that replace the word compliant? The like would replace the word compliant? Or it would be dark sky-like compliant lighting?
It could just be dark sky-like and get rid of compliant. I think they're the same thing. So consider adoption of standards for dark sky-like lighting on city properties. That actually, I think, reflects our adopted resolution more clearly. Page,
I have a
that's,
question. or-
yes.
Just M, it says consider leadership and lead certification. Currently, our code has nothing in it about lead. The International Building Codes, which we adopt, has some specifications in there, but I don't know that we have any ability to do that. Is that just a realistic goal?
I don't know, it was interesting because something like this was in the last CDP, remember? And then when we designed and built this building, we totally ignored 100%, all of it.
Yeah, as we did solar
And
and
I don't remember the reasons
cost. Yeah,
very well.
Yeah,
Very well.
that was.
So was that a mistake, or do we learn something from it? And
we certainly haven't seen any protests from it, I guess, and the more protests we got was the cost of the building as opposed to LEED certified. So again, if it's something that is just a nice to have, there's such other priorities in here that I feel that we need to address, this unfortunately not being one of them. I just don't know how applicable it is to our environment here. I think sea level rise in that area are much more of a focus and concern than a LEED building. We have a couple of larger commercial projects that are proposed or approved or what have you, and nowhere in it that I've seen there's any mention of LEED. So,
Oftentimes in other code language that I've seen, there may be either requirements for LEED or comparable type requirements. However, they don't require actually obtaining LEED certification. It's almost that they would be applicable to apply for it. They would meet those standards but not have to go through that process because it does have a pretty hefty price tag associated with it, just for the review and actual certification part of the process.
yeah, And I guess, I hear all the time, well, our code process and site review plan and applications are all so complicated and expensive now. To add this into it, I don't know, just another hoop that I don't think anybody's going to jump through, so why put it in there? Again, it's a nice thing to have,
Well,
but
and I think many, or at least I know some people would at least argue that some of the other priorities that you talked about, climate change and sea level, they would argue that a LEED certified building is helping achieve that overall, right? That's one of the goals of being, so.
I don't disagree with you at all, but when the rubber hits the road, is anybody actually going to, do it? So, again, it's a nice to have, but I won't even say it's a low priority. It's kind of doesn't exist, so.
Well, I
Just
was
my
think-
thoughts.
I was thinking that, and maybe I'm too optimistic, but the Stormwater Task Force, I was very interested in hearing what their incentive recommendations are going to be, because we might get some new ideas or something that leads us in the direction of some of these principles.
Yeah.
I hear you and I don't disagree. I'm also comfortable with, because it says consider, it's not definitive. It gives us an out, an opportunity to study it if we will. Anybody else?
On next point, if I may,
Yeah.
Point N, it says, continue to effectively promote and publicize the city, recognize and permitted recreational events. How does the city currently do that?
I don't know, and I've wondered, what are things that we already do? And do we have to list and chart everything we already do?
Again, I questioned it as to, I didn't think we were in the business, if you will, of promoting. We have a Main Street and organization, and we have a Chamber of Commerce organization that seem to do that quite well. So our financial support of those organizations are, I guess, how we effectively promote. But I think this is a misnomer, to be honest with you. If somebody can help me understand how we do it, that's good. But I think we refer to Main Street and Chamber in other sections of the CDP, and part of their missions are to do that.
Well, what are city recognized and permitted recreational
And
events?
I assume
guess if you
we
got a
do
permit.
the beach cleanup day, I don't think it's run by the city, but we certainly promote that it's happening.
Yeah, they didn't actually do it last year. And that's a state, if you're talking about the coastal cleanup, that's
Yeah.
a state initiative where this is just a local.
But
But
this
I
is-
think this is referring to all of the permitted event, the races, isn't it? The walks, all the things that are, and I think they're on the city calendar, are they not?
I think they're on the calendar, and I think like the band site web page has, or the bandstand page has.
But remember,
all
this
the
is, this
concerts.
action item is under the chapter environmental protection.
that's
So
right.
I think it's related to things.
Well, it says recreation, though.
Correct. So this chapter combines environmental protection, open space, and recreation. So the discussion of parks and whatnot would fall more under that recreation
Okay.
category.
I mean, polar bear plunge, sandcastle contest. I mean, these are all things that happen that are recreational that we promote. I don't see any reason why we would not promote them. Arbor Day is something that we promote.
Right, but I mean, I guess whoever brought this up was saying that we already do it. So why is it on here as an action item that, since we already do it? It says continue. I mean, is that what you're saying? You don't know why it's on here because or what are we going to be doing differently?
It says,
The good news is that since we already do it, when it comes to the annual report, we're able to put a big check there that we're doing it.
Right.
And we've accomplished it. So I hear you.
Moving on, my next question is
Yeah.
point R. Consider implementing recommendations from the Resilient Community Partnership Project. That was a grant that we,
What is your number there?
sorry,
R.
R.
Okay, recommendation for resilient, okay.
If memory serves me correctly, that was a grant we received in 2018. Have we implemented any of its recommendations since that point? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest recommendations from that project was to consider implementing a stormwater utility, which we're doing now as part of the feasibility study. So I looked at that and wondered if we wanted to add maybe to the end of the sentence, consider implementing recommendations from the Resilient Community Partnership Project and Stormwater Utility Task Force. But really, the Stormwater Utility Task Force and the feasibility study was the main takeaway from the Resilient Communities Partnership.
Related to that, though, item X talks
Right, that's
about
why that's
an ordinance related to the FAR.
Well, wait a minute, let's finish.
Well, so if I may,
Or-
the way that both of those came about, the Planning Commission had a discussion that they wanted some additional information included about the Resilient Community Partnership Project. So the study and the documentation that was done related to that. So that's in the narrative portion. And they asked for a general action item that just mentioned implementing those recommendations. So that led to action item R. And then I guess the second to last meeting we had with the Planning Commission, they then expressed a desire to have a more detailed action item, in particular, considering changes to the zoning ordinance related to floor area ratio and lot coverage, regarding stormwater runoff issues created by impervious surfaces. So those two items directly stem from that project. And the wording is how the Planning Commission ultimately decided that they wanted it addressed, with R being a more broad, general implementation item.
Mayor, I guess you said earlier about, if we already do it, with something, a box to check off. So are considering implementation recommendations, if Stormwater Task Force is one of them, that's one of the boxes to check.
Well, maybe you could edit R, consider implementing recommendations from the Resilient Community Partner Project, including facilitating the Stormwater Utility Task Force. Because we're ready to check that off.
But that's more of a general, the
Yeah.
partnership project is a general, it talks about impervious surface and runoff and everything of that nature. So again, I think, as Lauren said, leaving is a broader opportunity for things to do, as opposed to, putting it down as the Stormwater Task Force on R. That's, as the report comes back, yeah, we have acted upon one aspect of the recommendations.
You can even put under R if you want, facilitate Stormwater Utility Task Force or something, if you wanted to mention it at all.
But what I'm saying is that's the answer to the question when we respond back to the state, as opposed to just, specifically calling it out, this was the goal and we did this goal. There are many goals in that community partner project, and we have accomplished or are in the process of accomplishing one of the multiple goals. I would say leave R as it is.
Okay. Anybody else? Liz Lingo, you're up. Now, you're addressing Chapter 7, Environment.
Yes, and then I'd like to mention, you guys spoke about Todd Fritchman. I don't think he did his presentation this year. I think he typically does it in February, before the lifeguard season kicks in, and I possibly with the city manager transition, it might have gotten lost in the fray, I'm thinking. I know it's a busy time of year for him, but I'm sure he'd still be willing to carve out a little time to come to a meeting. So you can just, I can work on that if you guys send me dates and times.
Yeah, and I think Evan, and maybe we need a little powwow first, because that he comes here is interesting, and he'll share a lot of information with it, but I really will want to be able to address the questions. What are we doing about the accretion? What are we doing about the whole thing? Now, if he can address that, fine, but I think that he needs your input, our input
Yeah, I
first.
think that's beyond, his normal is like the state of the actual Lake
Right.
Gerard, like the overall health and stuff like that, which to my knowledge is better every year. And I can remember 12 years ago when I worked on it, and it's certainly better now, I'll put it that way.
Except visually.
Well, not that corner, but the overall health.
Yeah.
There's a lot of indicators you can look at, which he can better explain with nicer graphics. So, but we can talk about that offline. Related to the parks, I did notice a couple of issues, and it's up to you guys how you want to address them. Cranberry Park is listed incorrectly. So there's actually if we know where Virginia Avenue dead ends, right? So there's the ocean block of Virginia, and then there's a few houses on the second block. There's a right-of-way there that extends, which is shown on the 2010 zoning map. They have a small line on it that says Virginia Avenue right-of-way. The area between that road and the back of the houses on Olive, so behind a dozen or so homes there, that actually is Cranberry Park. And if you think about it, it makes sense, because if the city ever put in that road where it has a right-of-way, then Lake Gerard would be to, I guess it would be the north, and Cranberry would be to the south of that road. So it's not the area down by Navigators.
Well, I said this morning that she, yeah.
I missed it. I just came in, I happened to turn on the meeting right when
Yeah.
you guys were talking about it, and looked
Yeah.
up the table, and I was like, oh, that's not right.
Yeah, it's interesting, but the mayor said that
That was my recollection,
was
the
the
entirety of
south,
that end
yeah.
was Cranberry Park.
Right, so I thought that was.
Well, we can defer to Kitty Cole, because she definitely knows, and it is,
Case, yeah.
if anybody's gonna know, it's her, let's be
Yeah.
honest.
No, I remember you saying that. That's why I mentioned it this morning, because I remember you telling us that, and I thought that was very interesting.
And I'm not saying the
That or even
2010
a
zoning map is
Google
right
map,
about
so
everything,
she
but
could point.
that particular part is correct.
Yeah, okay, okay.
Evan's going to bring up a map
Okay.
so that we can actually point at it,
it'd
because
be a lot easier.
I'd like to review that.
So then what is the one where Gardeners and Navigators is called? Anything?
Lake Gerard.
So that's so Lake Gerard Park is actually sort of bifurcated?
Really?
It's the Cranberry's in the middle between the two ends of Lake Gerard Park?
Well, once he pulls up the map, you'll see.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
it's funny
Yeah.
though, when we do our maintenance list, I have like a mowing and maintenance checklist. We divide Lake Gerard into like 3 sections.
Right, okay.
So,
Let's pause a minute and
Yeah.
have him bring it up, so,
Google Maps shows Cranberry Park here, and Cranberry Park here identifies Cranberry and Cranberry.
oh yeah, Google Maps is,
Google knows
Yeah,
everything.
Google Maps does not.
all right.
Start talking with Kitty.
Yeah, all right.
And if we can.
Okay, so start over. Let's
Be my
start with the mayor stating that he thought the entirety of the end was Cranberry Park and Sister City was located within that area.
If this helps. Okay. All right, so I think you believed all of this,
No, only the green area there.
just this little bit. I have no idea why that's highlighted green there, but I wish we could see the houses. Try the layers. Ah, there we go. So behind all these houses right here, see where the road dead ends? There is a right-of-way that extends on the zoning map this way. And there are a couple of those in our parks. think of over by Silver Lake on, what is that, Stokely Street Country Club. Technically, that's the same thing. But anyways, this could be a right-of-way here, and behind this hypothetical road between here and the back of these houses is Cranberry Park.
Got it.
And it's a very wooded area, and it's up higher. The rest of this is all lowlands. And honestly, to the average person, it probably looks like their backyards.
And I'm not being smart, but how do we know that's Cranberry Park? We look at Google's here, and it also says
Well-
Cranberry Park is all the way up at the bridge.
But on our zoning map, official zoning map, it is segmented C, Gerard Park, and then D is Cranberry Park, and they are called out specifically as separate parcels on the map.
So Patrick, do they match this that's on the screen or no? What you just said?
Not this part here,
They call, I can't read it from here, but does that say Cranberry all the way at the end?
It does, yeah.
right there.
But it also encompasses all the shoreline, correct? On the south side, Cranberry Park.
No, it's just between where this road would go and the back of the houses on the zoning.
I'm
map.
sorry, Gerard Park, you're right.
Yeah, so Gerard would be from here to here. Well, here to over here.
Kind of doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but
It makes sense if you think of it if we put in the road.
Yep. And that's the way the official map is. Again,
I'd be fine if we called it all Lake Gerard Park. Because honestly, from a maintenance perspective, we manage this, and then we manage all this. It's essentially 3 separate entities. Then the water being a 4th unto its own.
again, called out on the zoning map, it's just Gerard Park, no lake, just Gerard Park.
There you go.
You know,
And I think if you look back at previous maps, like we have rolled ones at building and licensing, it's always been Cranberry in this section here, never over here. And then the other point I wanted to make was we do not have listed as a park that is actually zoned as such over here.
Yep.
And I think somebody mentioned undeveloped open space in parks, and this would probably be the only one I'd consider.
What is that called?
Called
West Lawn.
West Lawn. And it really, let me see if I can, it really encompasses, the city gave
VFW.
the building, yep, we gave it to them for $1, as long as it remains the VFW. The rest of this, the parking lot, the woods, and then a tiny little right-of-way over here to Grove are all technically West Lawn Park, zoned as open space.
West Lawn Park.
Don't ever ask me why that name came. And you know what's funny? For the first couple of years I worked here, I couldn't figure out what it was. It was only reading through the really old Davy tree inventory. They actually inventoried this. Why? I don't know.
Do we maintain that at all?
We just started to. So like over a year ago, the previous city manager and I met with a couple people from the VFW and kind of explained we'd be working on invasive species and such over there. And we've always maintained the trees and during that time as well.
And just for further into the weeds, Mayor, you'd spoken about Silver Lake Park and Stokely Street Park of your concern. On the official zoning map, that is known as Country Club Estates Park as one parcel.
Well, I was going to say, don't forget about Turtle Bridge. That's how most locals call it.
Right.
Oh, I see, tabulation of open spaces on the zoning map.
Yeah,
It even has Shaw Park,
yeah.
Teardrop Park, Lee Street Park, Shaw Lake, Lake Drive, Island. So,
And the bandstand is
now you
known as,
boogered everything up.
Well, whatever you guys decide, I just want to make sure we were, because the Cranberry Park thing is something that people refer to all the time. And whatever the answer is, or whatever you guys decide, at least we can have an answer. one answer.
Well, I think maybe I would ask you and the city manager to meet and help Lauren figure out what these maps are. Go over to Silver Lake Park, Stokely Park. Did you get a part of that conversation?
Yes.
'Cause on our one map, it says the entirety of it is Stokely Street Park. But on our map, it divides it into two.
Oh, it divides it into Silver Lake and
Silver
Stokely?
Lake
I don't think I
Park.
saw that.
In Stokely, right?
I've never seen that before, honestly.
And that may be how the name shows up in DENREC's, the protected,
In their property map.
protected land or that data set. I don't know offhand, but
Yeah, it may have been named that prior to Country Club Estates developing, or at least those properties developing, because the Silver Lake Park is west of that proposed street. That's what called, what's that street called?
That number 10 is,
Stokely Street Extended.
that's been under, we've looked at that before very recently in the last like few months, and it's been difficult to figure out because different surveys show different things. But I believe that park was dedicated when they did the development of Country Club Estates, and that's why it was named Country Club Estates Park. Whether or not we all refer to it as Stokely Street Park.
Well, Evan's been here from the beginning of these conversations with word descriptions of the parks versus the illustrative descriptions. So I'm going to ask him to work with you and Lauren and himself to try to come up with what you think is
Okay,
a
correct.
resolution of all these multiple names and things. I mean, even Martin's Lawn / Surfside Park. Why do we have two names for everything?
Surfside,
Yeah.
Martin's Lawn and
Is that
Surfside.
Mariners too?
Oh, okay. I've never heard of you know what, I've seen it written as Mariners, but I've never seen anything official as Mariners.
The Mariners Christmas tree at Mariners Park.
Is that what that tree's called that they put up on
Yeah.
the pole?
Yeah, so that
I
you're
love
out
that
on
tree.
the ships, you're able to see a Christmas tree on land, yeah.
Makes more sense to me than
That frequently.
Surfside, but
Well, other than Deer and Central Park, we have no grip on any of the parks in town.
Well, but we do in the sense that on the official zoning map, they're all called out. And that, to me, and maybe I'm the lone soldier here, but to me, that's the basis of where we should, if you will, grow from or use that as the document of origin. Was that
Well, then
not?
maybe one of the action items, I guess, on the CDP then should be to get a definitive answer as to what we're calling these things, right?
so
I mean,
what's
even
the
Grove Park, I've heard in the last couple of meetings, maybe we should go back to Shaw.
I haven't heard that we should go back. That was the historical name of it.
That's what's on the zoning map.
Right.
so perhaps.
Patrick, are your eyes better than me? What, the Mariners Park or Surfside Park, what is the name on this map?
Surfside Park. I can blow it
There
up
it
on
is,
the
J,
screen.
okay, Surfside Park.
And, you know, back to your point, we've also got the Country Club Estates Park as opposed to the other two. So,
That's in here also.
yeah, Lauren, you were,
Country Club Estates Park. Right.
I was going to recommend, what if for table 7-2 and map, is that 10? Yes, map 10, if we change the titles to city parks and open space districts, and then I can work to come up with the appropriate locations, wording, and remaining location description information in the table to reflect that.
Well, again, I'm not that comfortable with the use of open space on that map because on the zoning map, it includes all the islands. And I don't know that they need to be on the map listing parks and open spaces.
but we don't have a classification of parks officially. We have open space zoning, right?
Well, right, it depends whether you're talking about zoning or talking about, as Evan referenced, the code does officially classify parks.
Yeah, to me,
But there's not a
that's,
zoning district called, I'm sorry, there's not a zoning district called the Park Zoning District. There's just open space.
well, that's the usage we're trying to illustrate, city parks. I'm going to dump it in the city manager's hands, and you work with Liz and Lauren, and
And Mayor, I have a last clarification on this. Is this table new this year, or have we always had a table? I don't remember off the top of my head. Because my follow-up was, have we always had this issue that we're opining on?
I don't know. Lauren, do you recall if this is a new?
I am
Product.
double checking.
I mean, it's not that critical, but it just occurred to me that, has it always been this way?
Well, we had trouble when the names, and we were working on chapter 195, which is why a lot of them ended up with like 2 to 3 names listed.
Which and it sounds like some of these names, at least as they're defined under the definition of park or listed under the definition of park, are consistent with the zoning map.
Yeah, you don't have Shaw Park listed, do you?
Shaw Park is listed, yes.
That's listed
Grove.
instead of Grove Park?
Grove Park, but it says Grove parentheses Shaw Park.
we put a lot of
Do the same
parentheses.
thing for Surfside and Mariners Park, the Stokely Street Country Club Estates Park, and then Teardrop Silver Lane Park.
And if I recall, we
All
did
have
it
2 names.
that way because we wanted it to be somewhat user-friendly, that if you're reading it as a regular human being and you know Grove as Shaw, then it'll connect in your mind.
So if I read Commissioner Bennett correctly, you would like to add another name to Deer Park and for consistency. everything-
Bennett Park, I live near
Everything
there.
has a primary and a secondary name.
Bennett Park, I live near there.
The existing CDP does not have a table, however, does have more of a narrative description of the parks. I think providing the table was just more of an effort to streamline the information rather than have
How's that working? for
pages
us?
of narrative descriptions.
Thank you.
All right, well, now that I've thrown that wrench in there, I'm going to leave.
Right. I do have a question, though, but
Sure.
Liz, as you mentioned, and I think most people probably refer to like Girard Park
Yeah.
or Girard Park. I mean, is part of the goal here to say, let's definitively say what that is, or are we going to still continue to have this Cranberry Lake Girard Park?
I put that in there.
So that still will come with a
Pocket.
recommendation?
I have a couple ideas how to resolve it, but we can work on that in the meantime.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
One other question, if I may, on map 8 here. in
Give us a minute to
Still chapter
find that. Which
7,
one?
Chapter 7, map 8, is not a page number, but I'm just curious, I don't understand the legend here. In the Henlopen Acres, there's a lot of little blue circles. Is that wellhead protection or what?
That's what it looks like. I wondered the
Yes.
same thing.
It is wellhead protection?
Yes.
And is that their wellheads, our wellheads?
Yeah. No,
Because we don't have any in the city, do we?
none that are designated by DNREC
Okay.
in this manner. They're all located, the actual wellhead location is within Henlopen Acres.
Okay.
Well, that's where, if you might recall my mention at the last meeting that my desire to have the map expanded or a second map showing the other well areas and the wellhead protection areas, because we have some outside the city, correct? Yeah.
Well, this
Other than-
shows
outside
all
the
of,
city other than Henlopen Acres. I'm
this
sorry.
shows all of the designated wellhead protection areas according to DNREC's official mapping of that, and the state, they do require that we use their latest, that latest data source from DNREC to indicate these because of the the state laws related to wellhead protection areas.
Anything else, Patrick? Whoop.
I'll answer for him, no.
No. All right, thank you very much. We will go on to, we'll keep an eye on time. Remembering we have another meeting at 2 today. Maybe we can get through some of the appendix,
Mayor, I'm sorry, I just have a couple last things on.
or what chapter?
Chapter 7 still. I didn't realize you were finished with the last page.
Give us a page number, please.
The last page, 728.
Action items, okay.
X. So I know that we talked about R, which is consider implementing recommendations from the Resilient Community Partnership Project, but I guess want a better explanation on why we're adding this specific provision about FAR and lot coverage. And it sounded like it was added at the last meeting, so it was pretty recent.
This was at the specific request of the Planning Commission. They wanted this item related to floor area ratio specifically added as a standalone action item.
Because I've just gone through the Resilient Community Partnership Project, and I'm not seeing specifically where they make a recommendation that we make changes to our code to have a more stringent FAR and lot coverage. So I'd like some real rationale on why this is here and how it came to be here.
I think it relates to, because isn't there something in the resilient about requiring impervious services? So I think that's where it comes from, is adjusting the lot coverage for to reduce impervious surfaces. Because I think that's what's in there.
On page 34 of the, let me see, what is this document? The Coastal Municipalities Impervious Surface Coverage Report, which was one of the documents prepared under that project. Page 34 notes for Rehoboth Beach needs a definition of impervious surface and an allowance for the use of alternative types of pavement, could make adjustments to street design requirements, floor area ratio, lot coverage requirements, and maximum allowable building areas.
Yeah, so that is in the report then, right? All that wording you just said? Yeah, that's where it comes from.
And I think it also has the opportunity for incentives of that. So if there's rain gardens, tree box filters, streetscape bioretention, raised planter boxes, those types of no-mow zones, all of that aspect as perhaps incentives to gain or reduce FAR or surface or something of that nature. So I don't think I think it's more carrot than stick is the way it should be approached. I mean, that's the what I gleaned from the report.
Yeah, page 37 also talks about, of that coastal municipalities report, also talks about development incentives. So incentives may include subtracting the area of a best management practice from the total site area when making subsequent area calculations, or allowing lot density to be increased if a best management practice is provided. So trying to find alternative incentives as opposed to just a discount on a stormwater utility fee if and when a stormwater utility is ever pursued.
I just don't like the way it's worded, and it to me comes across as we're going to make changes to the zoning code to restrict FAR and lot coverage based on this recommendation, which is very broad and should be more incentive-based than regulatory-based in my mind. And we're not, the things that are, I think, even more important than lot coverage and FAR are what we count as impervious surfaces, which we count, we don't count a lot of things that are. Gravel counts the same as if we have a concrete slab. If someone wants to create a drain basin with, and it's in a shady area where they can't grow grass, and they want to put, drawing a blank on the name, but the artificial grass with a very extensive drain underneath to go into the ground, that counts as if it was a concrete slab. So these are the things I think we need to be focusing on, not FAR and lot coverage.
Report includes all of it. I mean, is it, I mean, I think that.
I know, but it's what we're highlighting here is being the most important. And to me, this is not worded the way.
Well, it does say strategies raised regarding stormwater runoff issues created by impervious surfaces. I don't know if that could be worded any better, but I agree that that should be one of the call-outs. But that's what's here. I mean, it does say changes to provisions of the zoning ordinance. It doesn't say more restrictions. I mean, in other words, the incentive part is implied as well. It just says to look at the code to address the concerns and the strategies of stormwater runoff and impervious coverage.
Well, it does use the word consider, so that means it would be discussion. It's
Right.
not a
Yeah.
definitive
Yeah.
change it,
Yeah.
or you will change it. What that leads to me is when it gets on agenda, if it gets on agenda, there would be opportunity for a lot of discussion,
Right.
not implementing it automatically.
I mean, I like the way it is only because it comes directly out of that report. And I had actually, in some of my feedback to you, Lauren, I think I had mentioned, because I had seen the general one under R, and I said, nobody's going to know what that is. Can something in the report be called out? And then the Planning Commission had that discussion and chose to call this one out because it relates to the utility task force that's being done now, and because it was directly out of the report. So I think that's how that came about.
In the report, it specifically calls out Rehoboth Beach needs a definition of impervious surface and an allowance for the use of alternative types of pavement. So that's what you've spoken about.
Yeah, which, again, that specific wording, I think, is more important than the wording that we chose to put in here, is my point.
It says, could make adjustments to street design requirements, floor area ratio, lot coverage requirements, and maximum allowable building areas. That's the full recommendation for Rehoboth Beach.
I understand that, but we chose to only focus on FAR and lot coverage in this bullet point, and that's my point.
So do we want to add to that?
Well, and possible strategies, to me, that broadens it quite a bit.
It's fine.
I hear
if
you.
I don't
I
voice
hear
my
you.
concern, I'm not doing my job. So I understand I'm in the minority, and we can move on.
I don't know that you're in the minority, because as I sit here and think about it, wouldn't it be better for us to expand what's in there to more closely align with what's in the other report? Instead of, it almost seems like it's been cherry-picked.
Well, should we just pull the?
Yeah.
I would feel much better about that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think
And
that's fine.
that's my concern. It's not even reality. Is there a perception that we've cherry-picked? And that's what I don't want. And that's,
So just pull that whole quote.
yeah, I
Needs a
would
definition
prefer
of
that.
impervious.
Broaden it for the action item and
Yeah.
then leave that for discussion at that time on picking specific details. Who has that you can send that to Lauren?
Sure.
Thank you. And Mayor, there's just a couple other topics that the Environment Committee is working towards that we've not gotten anything official from them yet, but I don't know if any of them rise to the level that we would want to include as an action item here. One is possibly implementing something like Lewis has, which would limit the gas-powered lawn equipment and landscaping equipment. I think we'll see, I think a recommendation will come before us in the near future to do something similarly that Lewis has implemented in their ordinance. Having an actual ban on handing out plastic straws and styrofoam. I've got them to hold off on that for the time being because there's currently a bill in the Senate that would take care of that problem statewide. Thirdly, an inclusion of incentives for pollinator gardens and implementation of them throughout the city. And I think those are the 3 items. So I only bring them before you to see if there's a palette to include them as action items. At this point, even though nothing official has come before you.
What was your first item?
Gas-powered
Gas,
landscape
okay.
equipment.
Yeah, we can certainly list any of those if you did a little paragraph. However, just like my proposal to talk about private shuttles, nobody wanted that, or we didn't want to put it in the CDP. That doesn't mean we can't address them in the future, and I intend to bring that forward. So I would suggest that perhaps these don't need to be in the CDP at this point. Also, I mean, we could get a ruling from Lauren on any of them. I want to make sure we don't rise to the level where we need to resubmit to the plus. I think we're doing pretty good so far, and I would like to do everything we can to avoid that. But so I would suggest that perhaps you wait till you get a little farther along.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I just wanted to at
and
least mention them to us.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. Anything else, Commissioner Srnowski?
Thank you.
Very good. Very good.
Mayor, I do have one thing just on chapter 7.
Yes.
Back on page 7.7, we talked a little bit about.
Give us a second.
Sure.
Seven. All righty.
We talked a little bit about Silver Lake and the outflow pipe. My only recommendation there is to change outflow to outfall. And also mention there, I guess it is the 3rd sentence. To prevent flooding when there is heavy rain and high stormwater drainage, there is an outflow or outfall pipe to the ocean located in the southeast corner of the lake outside city limits that is owned and maintained by DNREC. I received correspondence just last week with an agreement between DelDOT and DNREC, which shows that DNREC is the owner of that outfall pipe. So I just think it might be appropriate to mention that in this section.
So I heard 2 changes there for Lauren. One is wherever it says outflow, change it to outfall. And then the second, why don't you read again real slowly your addition of the ownership of the.
Sure. To prevent flooding when there is heavy rain and high stormwater drainage, comma, there is an outfall pipe to the ocean located in the southeast corner of the lake outside city's limits or city limits that is owned and maintained by DNREC.
All right, very good.
That's all I have, Mayor.
And we're still going to investigate whether Lake Gerard, maybe we should have asked Liz. We're still investigating whether Lake Gerard is fed in addition to stormwater runoff by natural springs, right? Okay. Anything else? Very good. Next on our plate is the appendices. Maybe we'll go till noon and then take a break until 2 or whatever the pleasure is. We'll see how far we get at noon, and if we want to finish a particular section, then that's fine. Page AA2 is acronyms. I wasn't sure if we wanted to add CHSS, Cape and Open Senior Center, to it or not. Page AA3, I wrote down RAL for Rehoboth Art League.
I could see doing that, because remember when we were going through the report, they had misnamed the Cape Henlopen Senior Center as the Rehoboth Senior Center, which is
Right.
probably why it's not in here anyway. So making that correction probably be a good idea to
Yeah.
include the acronym.
Okay. Rehoboth Art League,
I agree on that one too, yeah.
RAL. Where there is mention, such as on page AB, Appendix 17, of SCORE, SCORE, not to be confused with SCORP, but SCORE. Page AA4, AA5, AA6, AA7. One down, Appendix B, Reference and Resources, page AB2, AB3, AB4, AB5, historic preservation initiatives, the third paragraph under that, which is the first paragraph above the photographs. This only talks about a pending marker at Poodle Beach, which is not ready to be installed. And if we're going to mention that, shouldn't we also mention the Rehoboth Beach Patrol marker that's pending, approved and pending? And then there are 5 VIA sponsored. So really, I'm counting 5 historical markers sponsored by the VIA, a RBP, and a Poodle Beach one, so that totals 7. But right as of today, we've only got 5 installed.
Mayor, is it important to mention who sponsored them? Is it just the number located in?
I don't care to mention who sponsored them. I don't.
No,
think-
I'm a-
No, I would not mention the sponsors. So right now it says 9 of which are in the Rehoboth Beach area. Now that's probably because that has Lake Comegys outside the city and some of the others. But if they're going to mention 9 of which are in the Rehoboth Beach area, 5 at this time, there are 5 of which are within the incorporated limits of Rehoboth Beach. And do we really mention the 2 pending ones awaiting placement? If we do.
I would think so, yeah.
So if we do, then we need to also mention the Rehoboth Beach Patrol marker, if we're going to mention the Poodle Beach marker. So let me write up something on what the current status is and submit that. Stan.
I guess it's not an official marker, but is the Temperance Fountain, that was early on, is that recognized by the state? There's a plaque there, but it's old.
Yeah, it's on the National Historic Registry.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if, there's a picture in here somewhere
Okay.
of it, but I don't know what the mention is. So let me update that, and we'll include that there are currently 5 in the incorporated limits of Rehoboth Beach with 2 awaiting placement, and specify what they are.
Mayor, after that, the Delaware Historical Marker Program, does anyone here feel the Rehoboth Beach Cottage and Town Awards are not as official, but it is something that encourages a good design on a renovation rather than a new build? If it's worth mentioning it in this chapter.
Well, the cottage awards are subjective. You know, the museum used to have a different program where you were given a bronze plaque to recognize the age of the house.
Right.
Not necessarily the historic nature. But I would probably put that in front of the cottage awards, but, because the cottage awards also apply to new construction.
Yeah,
stuff
and it
like
is
that.
subjective.
Yeah. Anybody else? Page AB6, AB7, AB8, AB9. Has to do with educational facilities. In my earlier notes, I had mentioned consideration of the Rehoboth Beach Cooperative School. I don't know whether that's too small to mention in there. So that's one note. But also, the title, educational facilities, I thought, well, if you put public educational facilities, then that would exclude the cooperative school because that's a private school. And then I also thought that the location of some of these schools should be identified. Let's see, Rehoboth Beach Elementary
says it first
is
sentence.
located in Stokely. No, they're all there, aren't they?
Yeah, it says
Okay.
Beacon Middle School is located on SR
Gotcha,
24.
gotcha. The layout for Rehoboth Beach Elementary School is located on Stokely Street in Rehoboth Beach and serves.
Yeah.
Then you go down to
Right.
kindergarten
Yeah.
through fifth grade in, and then the next line is September 2019. New construction was finished.
And I just thought it odd that Rehoboth Elementary, which is in the city, gets 2 sentences, and the 2 other schools that are outside the city get like a paragraph.
Part of that is due to the information that each school actually has on its website.
Okay.
So the Rehoboth Beach Elementary School didn't have as
Gotcha.
elaborate a definition.
Have you looked recently? I don't know.
I honestly don't recall when we looked that information up. I can double check that though. And just for context, this section used to be in Chapter 3 under the section related to education. There is a table in Chapter 3 on page 3-27 that provides grade levels, the school, the address, and fall enrollments for the last 3 years. And the Planning Commission felt that these descriptions were a little too much to have in the actual narrative chapter, so asked that they be relocated to the appendix.
Susan, do you or Patrick want to help with that task of expanding the description of Rehoboth Beach Elementary?
Well, let's see-
You know,
yeah, let's see what's
maybe a
appendix and see
mention
what's
of the size, of where they're located, specific abutting the lake, size of the campus, and whatever else you can come up with. And just enough words where it eclipses the amount of words for.
Right.
All righty, page AB10. AB 11, 12, 13, 14, AB 15, 16, 17. This is the page where SCORE Association, I had suggested be an acronym listed in there. AB 18.
Just a note on that, we did try to look that up, and SCORE is, if I'm remembering correctly, that wasn't an acronym, that was the actual program name. It didn't actually, at least not that the Small Business Administration is currently promoting. So at one time in years past, it may have, but it's not known as anything other than SCORE at this point.
Okay, okay. Well, then that would give it a reason to not be on the acronym list. 18, 19, 20, AB 21, AB 22, AB 23, AB 24. The AB 24, the number of full-time employees, I thought we were in the mid-90s. AB,
Areas, some of the, not the appendices, but some of the main body of the.
I will look 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. Fourth bullet, last sentence, I'm going to read the whole thing though. Completed projects and initiatives since 2010. Now these are what, a submittal by the Rehoboth Art League. Says a strong partnership with the city was developed and the organization is collaborating on the debut of a recently acquired sculpture which will adorn the front entryway of City Hall and will continue activities on the boardwalk. And I'm on the front entryway of City Hall, period.
Yeah.
Ended there. And can you tell us, what is this initiative for a new sculpture?
The sculpture's down there.
It's down there, it's the one,
So I think you can strike that whole bullet there.
yeah. You know, the sculpture of the travelers.
Well, I didn't know, I thought
bus
that we
stop.
got that directly from the artist.
But it was through, I mean, Gary gave it, but it was through the relationship with the Rehoboth Art.
Facilitated, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So do you want to, I'm fine with whatever. Do you want to put a period there or do you want to delete the bullet?
Well, you know, this section, if you look at the highlighted text over, it does say the shaded area, completed projects and initiatives since 2010, and they wrote it. So I think the only thing we'd be at liberty to take out is the continued development of the Boardwalk Arts Festival, if that's obsolete now, but otherwise, it is, the sculpture is a completed project since 2010, and they wrote it. And we're leaving all the others in verbatim.
Otherwise, you'd have to continue, change the, and will continue development of the 2021 Boardwalk Arts Festival to present tense, use the word ongoing or something, and change it to Grove Park Arts Festival.
You could do that, I guess. You could, if it's been updated, you could change that.
Easiest thing is just to put a period there and delete it. What would, do you have a preference?
So again, on that point, strong partnership with the city is developed and the organization is collaborating on the debut, or the organization is responsible for,
This is what they submitted.
no?
Might I suggest, so we're not somewhat haphazardly picking which ones we are changing versus not changing, we add at the end of that bullet in italics or in the middle of it that The sculpture is in place, and the Arts Festival has since been relocated to Grove Park.
As an editorial note or something, yeah, that's good.
Just so that we're treating all of these, the interview summaries in the same fashion.
Especially if we're noting in the beginning that this is directly copied from what they've provided,
Well,
and then
and
we're
it-
making changes.
And it is past tense, I mean, it obviously, but I guess I even hesitate to use the word Boardwalk Arts Festival. I just,
Well,
I'm
but
just
but if
personally-
but if the note says it's been changed and is now Grove Park.
Right.
yeah. Everybody comfortable?
Yes.
Very good, thank you. Page AC 28. 29. 30, Appendix D.
So this is where the plus review is the first document.
Maybe this is a point to stop till this afternoon. But I would like maybe an explanation of, if we take a few minutes to have an explanation from Lauren of what this plus comment means in the next section. By example, you know, here's the plus comments, they're coming back to us, they're making recommendations. Some of the recommendations we may choose to include in the CDP, some may already be in the CDP, others we may reject. But what I wanted Lauren to explain was at the end of the plus comments and following the county recommendations and the county's response to our CDP, there's this page here that says city response. And I want to know what is our obligation, because it says city response to be inserted when generated after review by the mayor and commissioners. So do we need to go through every one of these comments in the plus review, in the county response, in the Henlope and Acres response, so that we can all be on the same page and develop that response? Explain that to us.
So when I've done this in other locations, what we typically do is convert this PDF letter that we received from Plus, basically convert it into a Word document so that we can take their direct certification comments and then provide in, you know, red text underneath each comment how we've addressed each of these comments. In some instances, it's as simple as noted and thank you for the comment. In others, it is updated in document, and then we provide a reference to a table, a page number, something like that, or may include a copy and paste of the language that we've inserted that addresses those comments, and we move on to the next one. Or if there are items that we chose not to include, you know, verbatim or specifically, it's something to the effect of the city may consider these comments as part of future implementation efforts. No change to the plan is required, or the city, as this is a recommendation from whatever agency, the city has chosen not to address this within the CDP at this time. So, you know, we typically will our original plan was once we have all of these discussions and we formalize how the CDP is, how you would like to see the CDP modified, we would draft this response and just note how that response has been developed.
I guess I don't understand the timing. I would think that this would be a part of this exercise today and in our next meetings. In other words, you drafting the report, and where you know there's a recommendation that we are addressing, then you would obviously address that in there and say we are doing it. But it seems to me that there would be a good number of recommendations in there that you don't know what we think. by example, that one example of Del Dot saying recommend consideration of closing the end of Rehoboth Avenue around the bandstand. You know, other than we talked about it this morning, I don't know that you know what the response should be. So I guess that's where I'm not understanding why we wouldn't address all these things right now.
I suppose we assumed that if there were additional comments that you wanted incorporated, those would have been discussed during the specific chapter updates. A lot of these items have been addressed one way or the other in the Planning Commission draft. I mean, we can certainly go through each of these.
And we've got the maps.
Oh, okay.